Hi guys, my name is Aurora and today I will be discussing the bisphenol pervasiveness and particularly the ubiquitous nature of these endocrine disrupting chemicals in the United States. So what are bisphenols? Bisphenol A, more commonly known as BPA, and its alternatives are synthetic estrogen monomers used extensively in commercial plastics since the 1960s, namely canned food packaging, plastic Tupperware, and travel cups. These are very cheap alternatives to other means of packaging like paper, cardboard, or glass, and therefore are very pervasive in the United States in packed and manufactured goods. One study found that 73% of canned food samples in the US grocery stores had significant amounts of BPA. So, why is this a problem? Bisphenols mimic the behavior of estrogen and act as an endocrine disrupting chemical. These have been shown to disrupt fertility and gametogenesis, pregnancy outcomes and neurodevelopment, and chronic illness later in life. Excluding the prohibition of BPA in baby bottles, there are currently no regulations against the use of BPA in U.S. manufacturing. Some of these organ systems on the right in this image are only a few that are affected by BPA exposure. So, who are some at risk populations for BPA exposure? The first is pregnant women who are at higher risk for adverse health outcomes of their offspring, particularly neurodegenerative defects. One study found that BPA was detected in 93% of infant urine samples of postpartum breastfeeding women. A second at risk population are those of lower income. One study found the inverse relationship between income and urinary BPA concentrations from 2003 to 2012. This is particularly interesting because it might suggest that those of lower income who only have access to cheaper or single-use plastics might be at higher risk for adverse health outcomes. And lastly, bisphenol factory workers. These workers were found to have 70 times greater urinary BPA than the general population. And like I said, there are currently no work regulations that are protecting these workers. So what are some interventions that are currently being applied? Currently, the EPA does not monitor or intervene with presence of BPA in the environment, although in 2010 they will initiate collaborative efforts to decrease BPA manufacturing. The FDA deems that BPA is safe at the levels occurring in food, although acknowledges the lack of research regarding long-term exposure effects. And lastly, the NIH acknowledges the lack of chronic health evidence and has established a 2-year rodent study aimed at exploring the full range of health exposures. So to quickly summarize this presentation, bisphenol exposures is ubiquitous in the United States and has been linked to chronic illnesses related to hormone dysregulation. There are currently no regulations in place regarding the use of bisphenols, and consumers should be more aware to limit their exposures of BPA and their alternatives, which are less regulated than even BPA. Thanks guys, and happy winter break.